Hi, I'm Marty Fortin from your association, the Association of Washington School Principals. I'm director of the Sispus Learning Center and the Chewelah Peak Learning Center.
And I'm Greg Barker with the Association of Washington Student Leaders.
In other videos, you can see and learn about what is ASB and what are the rules that ASB has to follow. You can also learn about booster clubs and those parent groups, PTAs and PTOs, the rules they have to follow. The purpose of this video is to look at that conjunction between the two. What is it that ASBs can do and what is it booster clubs can do to supplement school activities and the curricular activities, and what is a niche that a parent group can fill to help the progression of the school? So let's look at the first rule. It's public money. ASB money is public money. It's generated by students or in the name of students and can only be used in 4 areas: cultural, athletic, recreation, or social. A cultural activity may be a Veterans Day assembly. It may be a prom or homecoming at the high school. An athletic activity could be those WIAA sports, but also could be intramurals at the elementary level, at the middle school level. It could be cheer and dance, and it could be some of those activities that still aren't regulated by WIAA, but are very fun to do in the school. Lacrosse would be a great example.
And some of those fall into the recreational area, or getting out, getting moving, and so that activity type thing would be recreational. And social could be those, well, everything in school is social, but the assemblies, it could be lunchtime, it could be the recognition that we do throughout the entire year. So CARS is the acronym that we often use: cultural, athletic, recreational, or social.
And the booster advantage? As we look at that, the booster advantage is that booster donations can supplement any of those activities. Monies to help sports, we often see at the high school level, but they could be monies for a retreat, a recreational retreat. There could be monies that help support in a school assembly for cultural purposes, or even to help support awards programs that you have at the school. So let's look at rule number 2. Rule number 2 says that money raised during the school day and or school property and or school materials and or school personnel, all of those are public money. So school day. School day is any time that students are engaged in a school-sponsored activity, particularly those approved by the school board. Even if they're overnight, that's still a school day.
So, and let's see, and on school property. Well, school property is really any time we're hosting an event, whether it be on actual school district property, the school property, or when we take field trips, or we go to dances that are off-site, or we're doing those ropes course retreats, or just anything like that can be school property.
And school personnel is any time the prudent person in the public views an activity and looks at teachers and say they must be supporting that school activity. Finally,
the school materials would be anything that would be the direct cost. So that could be paper use, the supplies, copier use. It could be any of those things that are direct costs and that cost the money for people to use.
Now there are some caveats in each one of those. School grounds can be used by booster clubs with a facility use form. School personnel can help a booster club. They can have a private life as long as they keep that private life separate from their school life and don't use school facilities or school materials or school resources to help the booster club.
And school materials could be if the booster was able to reimburse for those. So having the copies made and then we pay the school back, or the supplies that we use. I think the big thing in all of that is that there's a relationship that the booster club is recognized by the district and the school. And so it's really important to set that up so that we know that this is an official booster club activity versus an ASB activity.
The booster advantage then is that under school board policies, boosters can raise money in compliance with all of these rules, but still walk out of the building with the cash. That they can have a facility use form and raise money that provides a service to the student, just like a DJ can do a dance or the school photographer can do pictures. That in each of those cases, there is a way that the boosters, who are another business in town, can enter your campus, follow your rules, and keep the money. So our third rule says that ASB funds are restricted and cannot be used for curricular purposes. Anytime a teacher or advisor says that this is required and it's going to affect your grade, then you can't use ASB funds for that, because that is curricular. Now there's a difference between curricular and academic. Honor Society has an academic bent to it. So does Knowledge Bowl, Odyssey of the Mind, Math Olympiad. Those are all academic, but they're only curricular if they're required and progresses you to advance in a class.
And really, we do want all ASB activities, the things, they are educational in nature. So we just have that curricular, so the CARS stands for cultural, but curricular is not part of ASB.
So when the band director says we're going to mass band, and if you don't go, it's going to affect your grade, that's curricular. You can't use ASB funds for it. So what's the advantage of your booster club? That the booster club money is private and can be used to support classes and coursework. A grant from the booster club can then be to the band in that scenario and pays for the bus, pays for the entry fee for that contest. Let's look at our next rule.
So our next rule is that co-curricular is not a legal term. It's actually in statute where we have curricular and we have extracurricular. And so in the ASB world, we really have to define which parts of these are graded and non-optional that will affect the ultimate outcome, and which parts can be then translated or utilized in an extracurricular capacity. Sometimes we use the example that basketball, we can have basketball units that are graded in PE, but we can also have basketball, the athletics. That our band can have performances that are required concerts, but they have a pep band that could be an extracurricular voluntary process. So you just have to very clearly define what's curricular and what's extracurricular.
So when you come into those situations that say as a wrestling mat that's used in PE, but it's also used in extracurricular wrestling, you say, how can we fund that? And here's where that booster club advantage comes in. That a booster club can grant money to the schools to cover that curricular use of those shared equipment or shared supplies. So you got balls that you want to use in basketball, but they also want to use them in a PE unit. If the booster club helps pay for that and grants some money for that use, now that helps cover that that difference in the cost for the items.
So the booster club has the ability to do both curricular and extracurricular. They can be the bridge over which everything falls under their realm.
Okay, we're ready for the next rule. ASB money is public money, and you can't give it away for private use. It's actually a measure of our Washington State Constitution. So anytime money is raised as ASB money, you can't give it away for any kind of private use, scholarships, grants and aids, exchange students, and so on. You cannot use public money for that.
There is one small caveat in there that if you have district policy, which most districts do, that students are able to do charitable fundraising, but those are for organizations typically more than individuals. So there is that ability, it just has to be communicated appropriately and that the students are part of that planning.
And the booster advantage is that booster club money is private money. Booster clubs, under the direction of the board of directors and the membership, can give scholarships, they can give grants and aid, they can give money to the school to be used for curricular purposes. The booster club money is private money and is up to the board and the membership as how they want to use it. So here's what's next. ASB funds, the students and staff must collaborate on the generation and use of public money. If you buy items for the basketball team, wrestling team, the cross-country team, not only does the coach request those, but student officers have to agree that you have to pay for them. That's part of the Washington State law.
And part of that law is that it's grades 7 through 12 that its students are involved. Sometimes at elementaries, the principal may have an advisory, but the principal can serve in that role of making those decisions as the president and treasurer. But predominantly, we do want to see, or we need to see, the collaboration between students and staff in that generation and expenditure of funds.
And the booster advantage in this case is that the board of directors decides how to use that private money. It's not a student and staff collaboration. Students or staff can go to the booster club and ask for money, and the booster club board, based on their policies, can grant that money as a grant to the public entity to be used specifically how the booster club describes. In fact, the recommendation is when they do that, there's a form that's signed by the school to say, here's exactly what the money should be used for, and if you don't use it for that, you can return it to the booster club. So here's the next rule.
We really have to have a system in place to monitor and protect the use of this public money. That's why we have a bookkeeper, or we have staff that work at reconciliation, writing checks, the approval process that includes students where they approve the money, they also sign off before it's expended. So it is that back to that collaboration of students and staff following that process all the way through, and that not just one person has all of the items that they need to do at one time, that there's several people that are part of that.
So school really is a business. In fact, it's a very well-run business. It gets audited every year. Most businesses don't have those kinds of audits every year. But your booster club is also a business. It's a private business and needs to run like a business. So in that case, the advantage of the booster club is that the booster club have many of the same requirements to protect their private funds and must use internal controls. So the booster advantage really is very similar to what the ASB advantage is in this case. Okay, we're ready to look at our next rule. That there are federal rules, state rules, school board rules, and their own rules about ASB. ASB's own rules are their constitution. The school board can make rules that are even more restrictive. The school board will have rules about how booster clubs can exist. The state rules are in the Administrative Code and the Revised Code of Washington. And the school must follow two other big federal rules, and one of those is nutrition. And nutrition rules have to do with the kinds of foods you can sell to students during the school day, even just before the school day starts and up to half hour afterwards. And it regulates the use of salts and sugars and fats and carbonation and caffeine, that the school's tied by all that. And indeed, the booster club's tied by all that during the school day too. So if you've been in a PTA that sells popcorn monthly to elementary students, now you have to look at what's the fat content, what's the salt content to that popcorn that you're selling. The other federal rule that schools need to follow is commonly called Title IX. It's a gender equity law. And the booster club's interaction with that has to do with when the district receives money from the booster club, they have to decide, can we make this equitable? Can we make it fair? But there is advantage to the booster club.
And it's not to say that none of these rules apply. It's that certain rules apply to booster clubs and certain rules, all of them apply to the ASB. So the advantage is that you just really have to look into what federal, state, even district policies. You won't be governed by the ASB Constitution, however.
There are different rules that the booster clubs follows, but not the same as ASB rules, and they can really work together. Let's look at our next rule. In a corporate sense, the principal is the chief executive officer and the chief financial officer of the ASB and answers to the board of directors. The booster advantage is that the boosters answer to their own board of directors. They're a nonprofit corporation. They do not have to answer to the school. If they want to make donations to the school or want to operate on the school campus, they have to follow those rules, but they really operate to their own rules. They're not a school-sponsored activity. They're not a school-connected activity. And I think we're on our last rule. The state auditor is interested in ASB, but there are many other organizations that are interested in ASB. And in the booster club realm, we look at that as an advantage, but they're a private business, and they still have to comply with Washington state and federal agency oversight. Often when I hear that a booster club has been formed, I hope that the parents know that they must register. They become a business in town. They must tell the state of Washington they're in operation. They must tell the IRS they're in operation, and they must keep track of their books. If someone wants to look at a booster club financial records, their form that they file with the IRS by law needs to be made available to anyone that wants to look at it.
And some of those other agencies that, for all of us, pretty much a lot of the state agencies, but we have the Gambling Commission, we have the Department of Revenue, we have the even WIAA, we have our health departments. So it's always a consideration what kinds of other agencies out there might be interested in what we do or can provide guidance. And again, we'll provide some handouts in addition to this video that would allow you to look at those and be able to connect to find out more information as you're doing fundraisers or you're trying to work with the school district.
So the purpose of this video is to quickly look at the rules the school has to follow and where the boosters can help, where the boosters are the advantage, and where the boosters can take their labors and their efforts to enhance the school. There will be more handouts available here. We'll also show our emails so that you can send and ask us questions. We're happy to help with that. And we hope that all of your interactions with your parents and the parents and faculty working together is always positive.
Thank you. And we hope that we can help you in the future.
Thanks.